Let's look into promise.all.settled. As you might have noticed here, we use the term settle, and it's more of a linguistic convenience, and I want to point out that settled is not a state. It just implies that the promise is either fulfilled or rejected, but not pending. It's just in either of the states after the resolution, and that's what we call settled. So when a promise is said to be settled, it could be in either fulfilled or in rejected state, but not in pending state. And to make things very clear, settled is not a state at all. It's more of a linguistic convenience. So now that is established, let's look into the scenarios. Now let's look into the first scenario, and you might have also noticed something strange with the visual representations as well. So in the first scenario, all promises get fulfilled, and in the visual representation for the first case, every single promise that starts is in the pending state. Just a second. It's in the pending state, and first P2 fulfills, and then P1 fulfills, and then P3 fulfills. Now you have to note that when we say the promise has settled, what is important is that its status and its value. The status and the value can be collectively called the outcome. So unlike promise.all, where we get only the value, promise.all.settled also returns the status along with the values. Now if we take a closer look, we have P2 getting fulfilled first, and then P1, and then P3. Promise P, when it gets fulfilled, you can see the value along with the status. So the green icons below represent the status. And to be clear again, the order of fulfillment or rejection does not matter at all when it comes to looking at the order of the values in the promise P. So the values appear in the exact same order as the order of the promises that were passed in. So yeah, now let's look at the second case where one or more of the passed in promises get rejected. So in this case, and if you look into the visual representation, all promises are in pending state. P1 gets fulfilled, and then P2 gets rejected, and P3 gets fulfilled. So as I have already mentioned, every time a rejection happens, there is always a reason, which means the outcome has the status, which says if it's fulfilled or rejected, and the value in case if the promise fulfills, or reason if the promise has been rejected. And if you look at the value of promise P upon fulfillment, you would notice that is also a rejection reason as well. So this would be the exact same thing that you would notice in the JSON as well. So it would be a reason, and it will be the status that is indicated here. So let's look at the third case where all passed in promises get rejected. So in this case, by applying the logic that we saw in the above two cases, it is obvious that independent of the resolving order, promise P gets successfully fulfilled only when all of the passed in promises, that is P1, P2 and P3, settle. So it doesn't matter if all of the passed in promises get rejected. So the promise P fulfills when all of the promises settle. And as you can see here, the promise P contains the status and the reason. And why did I say reason? Because all the promises just got rejected, and when there is a rejection, there is a reason. So when it comes to empty iterable, in an empty iterable, the behavior is very similar to the promise.all empty iterable scenario. So the promise.allSettled method returns an already resolved promise with a value that is an empty array. So that is pretty simple.